Carson Salyer. I came on staff here at Westminster in the summer of 1995 to the position of associate pastor for pastoral care was the title at that time. And I remained in that position until November of 2016. I was blessed to serve this church for 21 years in that capacity. In the early winter of 95, the phone rang at my desk in the church in Knoxville that I was serving as an associate pastor. And John Hardcastle was on the line, and he was wanting to know if I would be interested in talking with this church about coming here as an associate pastor. And what immediately drew my attention was that it was a call to an area of ministry, pastoral care, instead of being a generalist as the associate in another church. This would bring a chance for focus in my career. And when we came to visit, my wife Janet and I came to visit, and we sat in the back of the sanctuary for that first worship service, I was sure that this is where I needed to be based on the worship that we experienced that day. I think I was drawn to pastoral care as an area of focus because of the pastoral care that I had extended in my previous calls before coming to Westminster. I really enjoyed and felt like I had gifts in visiting with people one-on-one in small groups, being a listening presence and helping people come to a healing place in their own lives, that was what was needed for them. I just enjoyed that work. I felt like I had something to offer to others. I greatly appreciated the collegiality of the staff. The church was really intentional about having strong leaders in the key areas of ministry that the church engaged in. We had very strong leadership in music through the music professional team. We had very strong leadership in liturgy, which meant that Sunday mornings were just spectacular every week. The best reformed worship and music around, in my opinion. We had a commitment to adult education, and the church actually was one of the first congregations to employ an associate pastor just for adult education, and that has continued. Had a strong presence in youth ministry, with the pastor hired to do that work and to lead the initiative in youth. Strong commitment for children's ministry through a position of DCE. Strong programs across age groups for everybody in the congregation. That was a real joy to be a part of colleagues that specialized and had depth in their fields and typically stayed fairly long in the position. We had turnovers during the time that I was here, but we had key people to stay for many years, and that really adds to the depth and the vitality of the ministry of the congregation. I think KC's leadership style and open admission that he could not do everything helped lead to having associates in key areas of the life of the church. And he was able to share that ministry in a very collegial way. And he always took the health of his staff to heart. Casey was a very strong liturgical leader, a very strong preacher. Some people would really love KC, and some people perhaps didn't like KC because of his strong opinions. Like all of us, he had strengths and weaknesses, and he could laugh about all of it. And that set a very good tone for the rest of us, to be able to laugh at our foibles and our successes. Being on staff at Westminster was enhanced by having people who remained in their positions over a long period of time. And certainly KC fell into that category. And after his retirement, the church went through a searching period to locate the next head of staff and pastor of the church. And the search committee brought forth the candidate of Donovan Drake. And his call to this church and his arrival helped us to see new gifts in ministry, to see new visions about the future of this church, and brought changes that have truly enhanced the ministry and work of this church. It's been fun to work with Donovan. He became a good friend, and just so glad he's here. It's been really wonderful. One of the things I really enjoyed being on staff here at Westminster was the support of the admin staff in the office and the sextons who cared for the buildings and grounds. Their efforts every day of the week enhanced and enabled the ministries of the program staff of this church. And I just want to say to them, past and present and future, thank you for all you do to facilitate the work and the ministry of this church. Moving from an academic gown to an alb was refreshing to me. To understand that the alb is representative of the gown that newly baptized wore after their baptism in the early church as a sign of their baptism, just opened a new way of thinking about inclusivity and worship. We were all baptized, and we wear a white alb to symbolize that, and we wear a stole just for our office, but everyone wears white, and I just love that aspect of our faith. I've always appreciated the sign in front of the church that says that Westminster gathers here. That was always a part of our discussion in the new member class as people explored becoming members here. We wanted them to understand that the church was far more than just our building or just the service on Sunday morning. It was the fact we came here and worship, to learn more about our faith and to experience the presence of God among each other, among ourselves, and through the worship and liturgy. And then we were to go out into the world to live on our call, be that in our career in business or education or in the household, or putting our hands to work at Habitat, or going down to Martha O'Brien or other agencies to work. We went out into the world to serve Christ and to be the hands and feet of Christ, and to come back on Sundays and be renewed and restored that we might do it again. And I've always loved that about this church. It's really a hands-on church. I was called to be the associate for the caring ministries here at Westminster Church. And over the years, 3 new ministry opportunities developed in the life of the church. The first being our participation in Habitat, when we started in 1997 to build a home each year with the Habitat affiliate here in Nashville. That program allowed everybody in the church across all age groups to participate and join in that work. And it's been wonderful to see the church participate in that program every year since. Another ministry that developed in the life of this church was our participation in Living Waters for the World that Bill Klein and Beth Klein Felch brought to us in 2007 and 2008. We began work in Peru, bringing the gift of clean water to communities in Peru. And then we opened a program to bring clean water to families here in Tennessee. And that ministry continues to change lives and provide clean water and involve people from the church to this day. A third ministry area came to us, unfortunately, in August of 2005 when Hurricane Katrina made landfall on the Gulf Coast. We immediately began to put teams together to go down to the Gulf Coast to help people rebuild their lives and their homes. We were hosted by Presbyterian Disaster Assistance host sites, and we enjoyed that work for about 5 years, and I watched a lot of people in the church participate and enjoy that ministry. In May of 2010, we had our own flood, and Westminster immediately sought to become a Presbyterian Disaster Assistance host site so we might host others who would come to Nashville to help us rebuild people's homes and lives through their volunteer work. I hope that this church continues to be faithful in its worship in its education, in caring, in ministry, and nurturing of its own members and those whom they encounter.
I'm Janet Salyer, Carson's wife, and this is my thank you note to our Westminster family. Dear Westminster, I also remember vividly our first worship experience here. The beauty of that service moved us beyond words. The choir sang the Chichester Psalms, and it was exquisite. Worship here was as inspiring as we had heard it would be. So on top of all the other things Carson was excited about in this calling, we were thrilled in knowing that we would experience Reformed worship at its best. When Carson was called to the position of Associate for Pastoral Care, I was happy for him and for us. But one thing that people accepting a call to an exciting new position don't often talk much about is that if you're leaving a place you love, there's grief in the move and in the change. We had enjoyed 12 wonderful years in Knoxville, and in coming to Westminster, we were leaving a church we loved. We were leaving our beloved Smoky Mountains and the friends whose children had grown up with our children. I was leaving a job I loved. So in our move to Nashville, we experienced great joy, but there was also grief. However, because of the many ways that this church welcomed and cared for us, we moved through the time of grieving and into a new season that exceeded our expectations. In Guy's recent sermon, Setting the Table, he quotes Henry Nouwen, who said that discipleship doesn't have to be heroic. It sometimes is, but the life of faith is composed of 1,000 small gestures of hospitality. Except according to Jesus, there is no small gesture in the economy of God. Westminster, you have welcomed us in myriad ways. You were here for us the Sunday Carson was installed when our daughter Erin, who had just graduated from Presbyterian College, stood with us and our younger daughter Megan after the service and was greeted by the congregation, and then drove herself to the airport where she flew to the meeting of the General Assembly to be commissioned as a Presbyterian young adult volunteer in mission for a year in Buenos Aires, Argentina, followed by a year in Costa Rica. You prayed with us for her and asked often about how she was doing. You were here for us when our daughter Megan finished college and left for her year as a young adult volunteer in Edinburgh, writing letters to her and saying prayers for her well-being. You were here for me in the discernment of my call to ministry, encouraging me and supporting me during my preparation years, and were here for me in this sanctuary when I was ordained. You were here for us when our parents died, when Megan was diagnosed with a serious chronic illness, when our daughters married in this place, and when we baptized our granddaughters in this sanctuary. Though my ministry meant that I worshiped away from Westminster for a number of years, this church was always here for me as a safe harbor. The friendships and sense of community we have known here are priceless. Everyone needs a place of belonging, a place at the table, a sense of home, a sense of purpose, and a community. And in a large congregation, it's a challenge sometimes to help people find ways to connect. And what a wonderful job you are doing here, making that possible through small groups of all kinds and through so many ministry opportunities. You continue to reach beyond yourselves and to welcome the stranger. For me, the adult choir, and now the Changing Gears Bell Choir, have been community within community. And when Carson was on the church staff, I loved the fact that we family members of staff were included in dinners and celebrations. In those times together, there was often lots of laughter and storytelling and sharing. Sometime ask Donovan about the evening we said goodbye to Ben and Lydia Kane when Ben had accepted a call to Tarboro, North Carolina. We are still laughing about a hilarious case of mistaken identity that occurred in our home that night, and I'll just say that it involved a dog named Sister. Westminster, you have welcomed us, cared for us, challenged us, taught us, and inspired us, and you have been home for us. Thank you, and thanks be to God. Our prayers are with you and for you always.